wonderful people. So, turns out I go a little bit cuckoo bananas when I don't have a project to be doing. So let's make something. It's my flatmate's birthday tomorrow, and she's requested that I come dressed as an animated character, which I'm only too thrilled to do. But which character can I choose whose costume is both cheap and quick to make, given that it's tomorrow? How about Oogie Boogie from The Nightmare Before Christmas? I mean, he is literally just a sack with eyes. Like, you can't really get much simpler than that. Small problem is I don't have enough fabric to make a full-size Sadie sack. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller and make a playsuit. It's still gonna have the same fabric with the visible stitching down the side seams, but it's just gonna be a cute little summery playsuit in March. Just think of it like Oogie Boogie if he was a 1950s swimsuit model. See, this is what happens when you come up with ideas as you're falling asleep. Do you see what I mean about going a little cuckoo bananas? I'm also filled to the back teeth with strong migraine medication today, so if I'm giving off happy zombie vibes, you're welcome. Let's get started. I have 8 of these squares in natural linen. They're 20 by 20 inches, and the weave is quite loose, so this might fray a lot, but I think that's going to be appropriate for the character. I'm also using this white cotton that I used for my 18th century shift, and that's going to be used to line the playsuit so that it's not see-through. So these are the 2 bits of cotton that I'm going to use for the lining, and these are essentially all that I'm going to use for the top half of the playsuit. So this is 40 inches long and 10 inches tall, and these 2 I'm just going to attach each side together so they make a nice tube. Now obviously the linen is not 40 inches wide, the linen is 20 inches, so on the outer layer I'm going to have seams down here, and I'm going to try and position the tube so that you don't have like a seam going down the centre front. So that I've got seams going down here to the waist rather than down here, and then that will just gather in at the top so it stays up here, gather in at the waist, and hopefully be nice and poofy around the top. First I'm going to cut 2 of the linen squares in half. And then we can connect those at their short ends so that we can make a nice tube for the top. I moved my room around for various reasons, and now I have even less floor space than I did before for cutting, so you're just gonna have to put up with the hideous camera angles and me contorting myself into awful shapes to try and fit in the space. I cut out 2 long strips of the cotton for the lining of the shorts, the same length as the remaining linen squares, which I stitched together into 2 3-square strips. I traced a section of a pattern I have for baggy high-waisted trousers for the crotch pieces, and I'm going to cut out a front and a back piece on either end of the fabric strips. And here we come to our first problem. The bottom corners of those crotch pieces have to line up in order for it to work, but the bottom edges also have to line up so that we have an even hem. In the end I used the pattern piece to elongate the front crotch pieces and just crossed my fingers that it wouldn't look weird. This is so unevenly matched in so many ways. It's genuinely just awful. I'm just hoping that like copious gathering is gonna cover all my sins, but oh my god, it's really bad. This is why we take time over things and we don't say we're gonna make something in a single afternoon. Crisis averted, I stitched the 2 front crotch pieces together and then the 2 back crotch pieces together. and then opened up that bottom edge on both the front and the back. And hey presto, the shorts lining is done! Now for the outer layer. Would you believe it if I told you that I've done something else wrong? So, I mean, yes is the answer is yes. Of course you believe it. With the actual linen that I have a very small finite amount of, I thought, oh well, let's just cut out the centre back crotch bit both at the same time. I'll just layer them on top of each other, draw it on, cut it out. Perfect. Then we can get them exactly the right size. Problem is, I didn't put them right size together, I put them right side to wrong side, which means when I go to sew these together, right sides together, one of them will be upside down. I swear I am capable of thinking before I act, it just doesn't seem to be happening for me today. Now luckily, one of these long bits that I've sewn together is a little bit longer than the other one, so I'm hoping that with that extra length, I'll be able to just trim one side off and it won't make too much of a difference. So this piece is like a fair chunk longer than the other one, just because I think the squares weren't exactly uniform when I got them. So what I think I'm going to do, because this side would be the right way up for the centre front, I'm going to line that up with as minimal loss as possible, and then I am just going to have to chop this bit off. So this bit will probably end up being a little bit shorter than the other bit, but only by about like that much, which should get lost when it's all gathered up. No, I'm not going to do it like that, because if that lines up here, this bit now is going to be massively longer than this bit, so we're going to have the same problem that we had in the first place. I've got to line that up there to this bit here and do it like that, which might mean that I can have a little bit less lost. Why is this so hard? So after ironing out those problems and the seams, we now have all the pieces we need. Okay, we're definitely getting there. It is 4:20. I'm hoping to have this done by 6 so that I can make a birthday cake. Do you know what the lesson here is, guys? Dear God, plan ahead, okay? Don't try and do all of this the day before. It never works out. And in my 25 years, why have I not figured that out yet? But yeah, so I've now got the top, which is just a long tube, and I've got the bottom, which is a huge pair of shorts. So what I'm going to do to put it all together is I'm going to take the lining and the outer layer of the top tube, and then putting them wrong sides together so that the nice seams are visible on either side. I'm just going to stitch them together along the bottom edge, and this isn't going to be seen because it's going to be on the inside, but this is just to keep them in place when I stitch the top to the bottom. I'm going to stitch the top to the bottom with the top like almost fully made, so I'm not going to stitch it together at the top, but the lining and the outer layer will be together, because I'm going to hide that seam that you'll see with a little band around the inside of the lining through which I'm going to thread the elastic so that both layers are going to squish down with it. Now, the bottom half is substantially longer than the top half because the bottom half is made up of 6 squares, whereas this is made up of 4 squares. So what we need to do is gather this down and sew it down before we even do any elastic gathering. I'm basically going to do like the lazy person's version of gathering, which is where essentially you match up important points. Like I've got the centre front of the top half marked out, and I've got the side points too, and I've done the same on the back and on the shorts. So essentially I'm going to match up the markings. So for example, if I match up the front and the side, I've got all of this extra fabric, and then as I run it through the sewing machine, I'm just kind of gonna squoosh it together as I go, because the thing is, this is all going to be gathered in anyway, so you won't really be able to tell whether it's perfect gathers in the actual seam. So let's do this. I actually ended up subdividing the edges a little bit more because, as you can see, gathering as you go on the machine was a little bit fiddly. And now we prepare the casing for the waist elastic to go through. I folded back the linen layer so that we were going to be pinning and stitching the casing only to the lining, so that you're not going to see the lines of stitching on the outside. I left this handy little gap so that using the safety pin trick I could thread the elastic through and then stitch the ends together. Before closing the top edge, I did some decorative stitching on the outer layer with just some black yarn that I had lying around. I then made a similar casing out of the cotton to finish the top edge, and then threaded more elastic through that. Well, that was more than a tad chaotic. I'm sort of pleasantly surprised and also disappointed at the same time. It's gone better than I thought it might go, but it's not quite what I imagined in my head when I was coming up with the idea. I think the main issue was I just used way too much fabric, especially on the top half. So when it came in, it was just way too poofy at the sides and it was not a flattering shape. I didn't mind the poofiness on the front because I think that kind of gave it a good texture, but the sagging sides that went down over the waistline was not a good look. What I should have done instead was look at the existing playsuit that I have that fits me really well and see how much fabric was used in that and take, if not a pattern, then just some rough measurements from that. Because it turns out completely improvising it isn't always the best way to go. I have a little bit of a tendency to try and do the hardest possible thing. I don't know why. Some kind of weird wanting to prove myself thing. I'm sure if any of you are psychologists, that speaks volumes about me. Next time I should probably embrace the humility and accept that other people who've gone before me know what they're talking about and perhaps have some wisdom that I can learn, i.e. from a pattern. But hey, all things considered, I am actually quite pleased with it. I didn't hem it in the end, so I left the bottom edge of it just raw, so it has a little bit of a frayed look, because obviously in the film, Oogie Boogie has that dangling thread that ends up being his undoing. If I wanted to wear it a lot, I would probably finish the hem anyway, despite the looks, but let's face it, probably only going to be wearing it on Halloween or other dress-up parties, so I'm not too worried about the longevity of that bottom edge. Now, one unfortunate thing about this project was that the linen that I got, because I came up with the idea on a Sunday and needed to make it for Wednesday, I had to order next day delivery, and the only place I could find that would do that was Amazon, which I know isn't the best source for anything when it comes to making things ethically. I would much prefer to give my money to an independent fabric store, or even, you know, not an independent one, but one that specializes in fabric. But my next project is going to be more sustainable and ethical because I will be upcycling an existing garment. So if you'll be interested in seeing that and keeping up with my future exploits, then please hit the subscribe button. Please give this video a like if you think it in any way deserves it. And the entries for the Foundations Reveal competition will be going live this Thursday on the 11th of March. So hopefully if any of you would fancy, you could vote for my 18th century rincewind, which would be really cool. Anyway, now I shall love you and leave you. Thank you for sticking with me this far. I know it wasn't exactly the most aesthetic video, but it was a fun little project to do. So I challenge you to go and make something this week, even if it's total chaos and it turns out utter rubbish. Just, you know, do something nice for yourself, do something that you're going to enjoy, even if it doesn't turn out fantastically. See you next time, guys, and happy crafting!